free-for-all. You're on your own, soldier.
What's been going on, Tom? You've been listening to any new music or anything recently?
Nothing real new. Um, just same old actually, surprisingly.
I've been getting pretty heavily into All That Remains again. They were one of the bands that I liked a lot in high school. Kind of got out of the routine of listening to them and was listening to some other stuff. But as you know, I follow Phil Labonte, the lead singer of All That Remains, on Twitter, and just this last week he retweeted this story about Nancy Pelosi and this whole it's a New York Times story that Nancy Pelosi tried to stage a military coup against Donald Trump. I'm just gonna read a portion of this here real quick. In a phone call to the chairman, General Mark A. Milley, Miss Pelosi appeared to be seeking to have the Pentagon leadership essentially remove Mr. Trump from his authorities as the commander-in-chief. That could be accomplished by ignoring the president's orders or slowing them by questioning whether they were issued legally. And I think that kind of transitions into what we're wanting to talk about today, in terms of the Capitol being stormed and all the media censorship and the impeachment now that's going on. As everybody knows, the Capitol was stormed on January 6th by protesters who appeared to be there to support Trump, and they appeared to have been just let in by security. Security didn't really do much to keep them from being on the premises and actually, entering the Capitol building. I do know that there was one incident of a cop being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, and I think he passed away from his injuries. Multiple protesters appear to have been linked to different movements such as Black Lives Matter, the Me Too riots from earlier this year, as well as the Antifa movement. The guy that everybody has seen all the photos of carrying Nancy Pelosi's podium out of the Capitol building, that red-haired guy, actually, I think they said that he lived in Bradenton too. There's photos of him at a Black Lives rally, or a Black Lives Matter rally from earlier this past year. And then Goat Guy. I think Goat Guy was, there's photos of him at an Antifa rally.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I haven't heard a lot about some of the people that posed for the pictures in the Capitol. I mean, it all seemed kind of fake. I mean, like, who would do that? It's almost like they were trying to get caught. Or like they were trying to make Trump look like a super spreader again, because none of them were wearing masks. And I mean, obviously, like, whether or not they believe in wearing masks, it probably would have been advantageous to be wearing one, because obviously there's cameras in there. So I don't really know what they were expecting by going in there like that. But there seems to be kind of a double standard between the Capitol swarm and some of the other protests that have been previously going on. People forget that the Capitol was stormed by liberals during the confirmation hearings for Justice Kavanaugh. The media acts like the MAGA supporters were the first to do it, but yeah, they were trying to say Trump was starting an insurrection. But we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, I think AOC tweeted out earlier today and was calling everybody that stormed the Capitol white supremacists, of course, as she typically does. Yeah, and I've been saying that the Capitol protesters had a point in storming the Capitol. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that they were trying to do it because of Trump. They felt like they were cheated out of the election, and like they were being lied to by the mainstream media about the election results, and they had to have felt like they had a right to an answer, obviously, because it's been like radio silent since the election. Every single one of these tweets that Trump has sent out or whatever was reported by Twitter, basically, or taken down. And people have felt like they haven't gotten any kind of real answers. And so I definitely don't think that storming the Capitol in the name of saving Donald Trump was a good idea. Like, it sure as hell wouldn't be my first recommendation for people looking for answers. But at the same time, you definitely have to recognize that there were some 75 million people that voted for him or whatever, and were just told that they had to accept the results the same way that the Democrats did in 2016 when Donald Trump originally won the presidency, where they staged riots and stuff like that for almost the following. It seemed like 2 years absolutely nonstop.
Yeah, the whole "Not My President" movement, and I mean, I knew for sure, like, whoever was elected this time, that a bunch of people were going to be disappointed and not consider that person the legitimate president. But yeah, people just kind of lack understanding of the other side's motives. Like, imagine if you thought the elections were not legit and the leader had just been installed. What do you think you would do? I mean, I'm not saying I would. Definitely not for Trump. I don't like a lot of things about Trump, but you can see why somebody would want to storm the Capitol if you thought somebody was just installed and the election was not legit. You basically feel like this is almost a third world country.
Yeah, it essentially, what it's doing to people is it's taking away their faith in the system. And that's like, I feel like a lot of times Republicans, I feel, and I don't like to put it like this, but at the same time, it's the truth. It is, Republicans have been losing this war against the left for a very, very long time now. It's not anything new. The fact that Donald Trump actually won the presidency, was pretty surprising and almost a wild card to literally everybody, including the right, because they have been losing this battle for so long. But uh, Republicans are losing the battle by giving into the leftist mainstream media, pushing a narrative and basically forcing the Republicans to go along with it. Because if they don't, then they're getting censored, they're getting impeached, uh, you know, their jobs. And I'm even seeing stories that some congressmen and women are fearing for their lives now because they think if they don't go along with the mainstream media narrative of the left that they're going to be killed for it. And like that, it gets very, very dangerous and sketchy at that point. Like it causes people to lose faith in the system when you're talking about now your own legislators are fearing for their lives that they don't go along with leftist media's agenda. Like that, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, if people are only really concerned about that, they should really look into some more things because they'd be really fearing for their lives probably, or like fearing for their futures basically if they looked into some of the other stuff that the government does and Congress votes for.
Yeah, and so going back to this whole New York Times story that Phil had retweeted from the you know that story also goes into detail about the impeachment that's going on right now. Um, the story talks about, or the story goes on to say that the Pentagon and Joint Chiefs of Staff basically told Nancy Pelosi no, it's unconstitutional to do that, so we're not going to do it. You're on your own. And Nancy Pelosi essentially had no other option at that point other than trying to go forward with articles of impeachment again. So far, the articles have been pretty rushed. Like, obviously, I think she announced it on Monday morning that she was going to that she was going to pursue articles of impeachment, and then it was basically like yesterday and today they were like voting on it essentially, to push it forward, to approve it or whatever, and I think send it to the Senate. And
Yes.
you know, uh, it's kind of, it makes you think, like, do they really care about us? Because at the same time, they rush these articles of impeachment and they had them produced, within a week. Meanwhile, the same left spent all of the coronavirus pandemic so far fighting over how much of our tax money to give us. And, I mentioned in the last episode that Nancy Pelosi was claiming that she was for these higher stimulus checks, and then got up on her podium and told us how $600 was somehow substantial and everything. And so it's like, you argued about that for the entirety of last year, cost millions of Americans their jobs, their homes, their businesses, and then you turn around and you rush articles of impeachment and have them done within a week. And it's like that should put it into perspective where the left's priorities lie. Their priorities have never been the American people. Their priorities have always been bettering themselves, bettering the lives of Democrats. They don't care about anybody else but themselves, and that goes for both sides. It's not just the left. The Republicans do this too.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, you look at there's like all these super rich people that are liberal, and it's always like kind of like the stereotype, like rich people want to vote Republican, like save money in taxes and all this. But I mean, when you're talking about like the mega rich level, like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and all that, most of these people are Democrats just because they have to vote or give money to certain people basically to get favors done for them, whether it be on the local level or the national level. But that's just how it works. Like, it's pretty much just like a club for rich people, and they act like they help poor people all the time. And the more you look into the economics, it's completely the opposite. And the more you look at a graph of what has been the involvement and what has been what have all the actions been done to try to curtail people from becoming billionaires and from having monopolies. If you look at a timeline of that involvement versus the standard of living, or like the prices of the poverty rates and the prices of goods and stuff, it's all gone way up. And it's the exact opposite of what they say. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and see this whole impeachment deal is very hypocritical of the left to do too, because when did Amy Coney Barrett get confirmed? Like, what, 2.5 months ago, something like that? And
I think way before that.
Yeah, I thought it was in like September, October.
I'm not sure.
When Amy Coney Barrett got confirmed several months earlier, she got confirmed because it was a constitutional duty to appoint a new justice. It wasn't being rushed. It's the fact that it was in order to follow the Constitution, that needed to be done. But for some reason, the Republicans were rushing to get a new justice confirmed. They called it packing the Supreme Court, and it's like, Obama did the same thing under his presidency, and they didn't say a word about it. That was, everybody had to deal with it. This is what, he wanted to do it, and it's his constitutional duty to do it, but then the next president does it, and all of a sudden there's an issue. And the fact that they're now turning around and pivoting from that and coming back to try and impeach Donald Trump after a failed first impeachment because they had absolutely no factual backing or evidence to prove what they're talking about. They're coming back now for a second impeachment, and it's like Donald Trump would be leaving office next week, but instead now it's this process or whatever because they have to embarrass him on his way out.
Yeah, it's almost like a pissing match. I think it's just a total attempt to take over, total beatdown. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, when you think about it, there's so much disagreement and not a lot of unity, even though they talk about it. I mean, there's no possible way that everybody's going to really believe the same thing, especially in a country that's this big.
Yeah, they brought about this impeachment because of the fact that they claimed that Donald Trump was inciting violence. He incited the riot. It was pre-planned. He had people plan it. He planned for there to be mass amounts of violence and for people to hurt people and all this other stuff. And Donald Trump released this video, or I think it was a video attached to a tweet, basically saying that he condemned the violence and that he told them to go home. And That tweet was immediately censored and deleted by Twitter, and then Twitter decides to drop the ban hammer on him and completely remove him from the platform. Uh, so he's pretty much been in hiding. Nobody's really even heard anything from him since all of this happened, because that ban came in conjunction with a ban on Facebook. A couple hours later, it didn't take too long, and then it's like one by one, all these different media outlets and social media platforms started either censoring him or completely banning him. He's banned on Twitch. He's banned on, I think, LinkedIn and all these other different social media platforms. And it I want to connect that back to this point that I made earlier about the fact that the right continues to lose, and this is why. Donald Trump did exactly what the left wanted him to do. He condemned the violence or whatever and proved on the, to the rest of the world that his supporters could be quote unquote violent. And that's exactly what the leftist media wanted to do. And you know how they thanked him? They banned him on every social media platform, and now all of his supporters are on no-fly lists because they're terrorists. They're trying to get the left is now pushing some sort of law to basically put Trump supporters on no-fly lists and like just essentially travel ban them from ever doing anything ever again. Solely because they supported Trump. I guess that automatically makes them white supremacists now.
Yeah. Just locally, I saw that a guy that I don't know if he's the owner, but he manages social media for a gun store, and he said that his account was closed out by Chase Bank, basically because he was associated with that gun store. So I mean, they don't want your business anymore for some reason. It's pretty crazy. The official charges against Trump are for incitement of insurrection. All the Democrats voted to impeach Trump alongside 10 Republicans. Does that say that they think there is an insurrection issue with Trump, but not BLM? Because what's her name? Dianne Feinstein had the Chinese spy for the, what was it, the chauffeur or whatever. And Swalwell had the Chinese spy that was like a sexual partner.
Oh yeah, I think I heard about that.
Yeah, I mean, both huge Democrats, and of course they are in condemnation of Trump, even though they're way more compromised. But it's also ironic because convicted domestic terrorist Susan Rosenberg is now a BLM fundraising leader, and they don't condemn her. I mean, she was caught with thousands of pounds of explosives, and she was sentenced to 58 years in prison, but only served 16 because she was pardoned. Pardoned by who? Bill Clinton. Yet the MSM and Democrats have nothing to say about this, only Trump. They only want to bash on Trump.
And I guess when you get banned from a social media platform like that, the first thing people are gonna try to do is create some sort of alternative for themselves. We always talk about, as libertarians, you talk about the free market and everything, how free market competition is always a good thing because when one thing dies, another thing is born, and something else always comes out of it. So this media censorship and everything that's been occurring on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these other different social media platforms gave birth to Parler, that a lot of MAGA supporters started switching over to. I even know there's quite a few libertarians that were on that platform as well. I know Eric July was from the band Backwards was on it. Phil Labonte is on it. I talked about him earlier. Several different libertarian supporters and celebrities or whatever are on there. But Democrats made pretty short work of that alternative too. Parler's now been banned from the App Store and from Google Play, and you could still download the app from their website for a short time after that had happened, but Parler, for some reason unbeknownst to me, decided that for some reason it would be a good idea to use Amazon as an ISP.
Yeah, AWS.
Or yeah, and use Amazon servers essentially to host their app. And Amazon banned them from using their web services, so the app is completely gone. I mean, like I still have the app on my phone, but it's essentially an empty app. You can open it, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, on top of this, they were supposedly hacked, and there was, or I don't know about hacked, but like somebody, gave themselves permissions and like found some sort of loophole, and a lot of user information got leaked, and this is probably in the wrong hands, etc. So, if anyone out there has Parler, I highly suggest changing your email password and some other passwords if you share that with Parler.
I did hear that they're in the process of finding a new provider though to host their site, right?
Yeah, supposedly they're looking out for a new host. So I mean, hopefully they can find a good host, and if their internet service provider doesn't shut down on them as well, um, and they still have their website, yeah, I mean, people to work with them. I mean, didn't I don't know. I think all their lawyers backed off too, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean that's crazy. You got to find everybody new from the ground up. They almost have to do everything in house. But I mean, this will be good. Maybe this is what we need to rebuild.
Have you heard of any solutions to the whole censorship problem? Is this something that's going to last, or are there any solutions, either long or short term, to combat this?
I mean, I don't hear a lot of solutions. Mostly, I hear from the right and probably some Democrats as well. Uh, to repeal Section 230, which allows internet companies to be immune from recourse. You know, immune in the court of law, basically from anything their users do or say. Um, the problem with this is, if you repeal this, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think these companies are going to try to let people do whatever and have free speech? You're not going to restore free speech by doing this. I think it's just going to increase fact checking. It's almost like a backdoor thing that Republicans, I don't know if they notice it or not, or if they're just conning people, but I'm sure people have noticed the fact checks and CDC information about any posts you make on social media.
It's on literally everything now. You can't make a post on a single social media platform without it getting tagged for false information.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be some link to a Wikipedia article or something in this video, but I see a lot. You go on YouTube and you watch a video about climate change, like no matter what the agenda is in the video, or what they're trying to push through in your head, there's always that Wikipedia article at the bottom that says, "Oh, click here if you want to learn more." Like, and it has like a few sentences like climate change is the increase in temperature or whatever, and you can't escape it. They don't want that liability. And also, free speech that needs to be protected is not always agreeable speech. So I don't think that these companies with liability are going to want to be putting out things that aren't agreeable. Although I think that they're ultimately doing a bad business move by censoring people and kicking them off. The other solution, really, like we were talking about before, is kind of the typical libertarian or free market argument. Let's just let the companies do what they want.
Yeah, it's like now all of a sudden the left cares about letting private companies do what they want when, just this week they're saying, "Oh yeah, now we're going to nationalize a $15 minimum wage because we're going to let private companies do what they want, but now they have to pay us more than they want to pay us because that somehow makes sense."
Yeah, and with businesses shutting down, that $15 an hour definitely isn't going to help. But yeah, I mean, I don't condone anything that they're doing. I don't like that the fact that they're kicking people off their platforms. Like I said, I think it's a bad business practice in the long run to alienate people. Ultimately, conservatives down the road are not going to want to sign up for Twitter, and I already know a lot of people are deleting their accounts or whatever. I'm already inactive. You deleted your Facebook. and I try to have very limited use on social media when it comes to posting stuff to the public. I know it's painful to have to be deplatformed and not have a social media or a voice for some people. I mean, especially Trump. I mean, this is definitely a hard time. But eventually, like I said, there's going to be internet service providers and, like you said, 75 million people. There's going to want to be internet service providers, website hosts, all this
Eric
other
July's
infrastructure.
talking about Elon Musk is gonna be the one that does it. Elon Musk is now officially the richest man in the world. He finally passed Bill Gates, and Elon's kind of that guy that's just like he just might be crazy enough to do it. He's very, I don't know. I wouldn't say he's not as politically involved as people like to think he is. Because he's a businessman, he's got all these different projects going on. He's got the Boring Company, he's got SpaceX, he has Tesla. He's got all these different projects that he's working on, and he doesn't tend to take his focus off of those kinds of things. However, when he does take his focus off of those things and look at what's going on in the world, he tends to go against the grain. He tends to be somebody that the left doesn't want to talk, because it's not necessarily that he speaks out against the leftist propaganda constantly. It's more so the fact that they can't control him, and they know he's an outlier. They know he's somebody that kind of thinks for himself and likes to stir the pot, and might just be the one that decides, hey, I'm going to open my own social media app and everything, and starts plugging that to all these different people. And then before you know it, Twitter and Facebook are complete failures because they lost their user base to Elon Musk's new social media app and everything. And then the left no longer has control over what people think and what people see on social media. That control is completely gone at that point. So there's a lot of speculation right now that he might be the one to do it. I'm not saying that he's expressly said that he would be the one to do it, but if there were somebody that would come out of the woodwork and do something like that, I think that's who it would be.
Yeah, I mean, you said he's just that crazy. I don't even think you have to be crazy. You just have to be smart, for one.
He'd definitely make a lot of money off of it too. I could definitely tell you that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, Trump, like 75 million people voted for Trump, and I mean, even if like 10 million of those people are the ones that get deplatformed and are fed up with it and want to, go on different social media and all this other stuff. I mean, there's going to be somebody out there willing to make this platform and profit off of it. That's just how it works.
What people need to start realizing is that social media platforms like Twitter, the whole reason that Twitter is popular is that they found a niche part of the social media market that hadn't been exploited by anybody else. And that niche was the fact that they shortened conversation. Instead of, these Facebook posts that are paragraphs upon paragraphs long and everything, they shortened the conversation. They gave you 250 characters or something like that to write a tweet and everything and say what's on your mind. It's very, very limited. Obviously you can thread tweets together now, but the whole idea was to shorten conversation, for it to kind of be like texting but with a social media platform. And that made Twitter unique, because there was not a single other social media network that did that. And that's why Twitter has dominated that portion of the market space for so long now. But the problem is that because Twitter has done so well at dominating that portion of the market, there's absolutely no other competition. And if there were to be competition in that space, if that competition did a very, very good job at creating their app, Twitter's one alternative away from being completely obsolete. If a competitor ever came out with a social media network that mimicked the way that Twitter worked, and people started flocking to it in numbers because it was the new and cool thing to have, or simply because the social media network didn't necessarily follow the same privacy guidelines and censorship and everything that Twitter and Facebook engage in. If that became popular and people started flocking to that, Twitter would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It wouldn't be a thing anymore. And I don't think people quite understand that. And we're even seeing that played out now, because what's happening is that since Twitter announced this whole ban of Donald Trump from the app, people have just been deleting their Twitter accounts. And because of that, Twitter has seen a massive drop with their stocks in the stock market. People are selling them like crazy. They want nothing to do with them because Twitter's on its way out. And I think that's another, I guess, I wouldn't say a thing to be excited about, but something that conservatives and libertarians can look at, as a light at the end of the tunnel, is the fact that, if we let them keep doing what they're doing, if we let them keep censoring us, if there's another mass exodus from their platform, they're done. And there's nothing they're going to be able to do to stop it, because it's the hole that they're digging themselves into.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really like letting yourself being censored. It's letting yourself not be censored and just like kind of evading it by, like we said, finding another platform and building it up from the ground up, because it will eventually get better. And I mean, one thing's for sure is, I don't trust the government to secure free speech because it already doesn't. I mean, there's no free speech in, state college campuses. That's all government subsidized. It's supposed to be like a great, place where you're supposed to learn and explore new ideas, but all they do is shut it down and promote pretty much Marxist ideas. And, there's no representation for, the common man or really any free speech in Congress. Like, you say the wrong thing and you lose the donors, and it's all about money up there, really. It's crazy.
And see, the right is also not immune to this either, because the right does the same thing. The right claim to be the ones that fight for liberty-minded individuals, but at the same time, the right has been advocating policy that's diametrically opposed to what they're saying to everybody else. And that's that they advocate for liberty, they advocate for government that doesn't interfere in your daily life, they advocate for lower taxes, they advocate for all this different stuff, and yet they're out here passing more gun control laws. They're out here doing all this stuff that is completely contradicting to what they tell everybody else. And so, it definitely goes both ways. It's not solely Democrats that do this. It's definitely Republicans too. I mean, if you want to highlight more hypocrisy on the right, the funniest one that I've seen recently is this whole. Obviously, it's not funny that a police officer died in this whole Capitol riot, but it's, MAGA three months ago was back the blue and everything, and now they're out here assaulting police officers and everything. So, you definitely can't have one or the other. You can't be sitting here flying back the blue. And actually, they were doing that at the rally. They had back the blue flags and everything, and at the same time, it literally, you can see in photos, they're like shoving the police officers and everything that were on the front lines. And so it's like, back the blue went out the window pretty quickly. But the one thing that I want everybody to kind of understand is that, social media is definitely slanted to the left. Mainstream media is slanted to the left. They're all slanted in favor of, liberal ideals.
Makes them money.
Yeah, it makes them a lot of money. It sells stories. They make clickbait links and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And all it does is divide everybody further and get people pissed off enough that they believe it, and they lose rational line of thinking. And, that's how they consistently win, is that they get people to think with their emotions rather than looking at evidence and factual information. They can only back up arguments with emotion. And so the one thing that I want people to understand is that this whole censorship thing goes both ways. Think of censorship like a pendulum, and pendulums swing back and forth. And so right now, that pendulum is swinging in swinging in the direction of censorship to the right. But what happens when all of those dissenting right voices are gone, and certain people on the left start to wake up and realize what's happening. All these people that parrot the leftist agenda, but don't really give any kind of thought as to what they're doing. They're kind of just robots. What happens when those people stop being robots and they start to realize what's happening? Do they now get censored as well? The pendulum swings both ways, and so eventually, that pendulum is going to come back to bite them in the ass. It if they lose control over what they're trying to control, they haven't achieved the end game that they want. And so, I think that a lot of people overlook the fact that it could very well just happen to them. The left wants to laugh at the conservatives that are getting censored here left and right, but one dissenting voice from the left and they could be censored too. The thing that people need to realize is that the government's only concern is to keep their power. That's all that they care about. They don't care about you or me. They don't care about helping us through the coronavirus pandemic or any of this other stuff that they like to claim that they do. They simply do not care.
Yeah, it's all hypocrisy. It's like the extreme left is everything that they say the extreme right is. They say the extreme right, say libertarians, they say, whatever you are, conservative, they say that you favor the rich people and you love the rich people, but the extreme left, all it is the rich people are the government. The rich people have all the power to dictate whatever goes on in your life, and they have all the money.
And so, in terms of this whole censorship deal, is there a way out of it? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere? Is there a way that this stops? And is there a way that it stops without coming to blows and people resorting to an all-out civil war violence? And it's one thing that Eric July talked about on his podcast called For Canon's Sake. I definitely recommend everybody go and check that out if you're liberty-minded like I am. The spot where Eric July said that libertarians can win the battle was spot on, and he said that spot is definitely culture. And when you talk about culture, you're talking about, being able to change people's outlook on things, being able to educate people who maybe parrot liberal agenda without giving any real thought as to what's going into that, as to, what the repercussions of doing things like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are advocating for. Like, they think solely based off of emotion, and so I think if they would take a step back and actually think logically and look at factual information and evidence and everything, that libertarians can start to change people's minds. But you're not going to change people's minds by insulting them and constantly arguing with them and everything and simply saying they're wrong. You have to be able to see things from their point of view and try to educate them. And so that's where libertarians can start to win the battle, is be a part of culture, change people's mindsets, help educate them, be a resource. You definitely know more about the economic side of things, in terms of the finance, stock market, that kind of thing. You know more about that than I do. I'm the one that's got background in international affairs and homeland security and government agency and that kind of thing and everything. So I can be a resource for that. But and it's not even just that. You can't let politics obviously rule over your entire life. You have to branch out and be a part of different things, do different things. You and I both are heavily into cars. Some people are into video games. Some people like music. Be a part of these other different subcultures where you can start getting this message out to people, this message of liberty and hope through all of the craziness that we see going on in this country right now. And it kind of Eric circled it back to his band Backwards or whatever. He circled it back to the song "Be Great." He said that's what that song is about. He said, don't just be good, don't settle for being mediocre. Be great. Be great at everything that you do, and make an effort to help other people.
Yeah, just become a positive force in somebody else's life, and teach them something. Don't make them hate themselves, like a lot of these left-wing people do.
Yeah, and I definitely think that if libertarians can start winning on that front, winning on the culture front, and uh, helping people and educating them, that things will start to look up, and we may start to see a brighter light at the end of the tunnel from all of this. But I think that's all we had for this week. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure to like and follow us on Spotify. That's where we're rolling this out first. I'm sure we'll have other streaming platforms to follow from that. We'll be back next week with something else for you guys. Obviously, that depends on what unfolds through the rest of this week, but the United States definitely has nothing short of good content to cover as of late. So I'm sure we'll find something that the mainstream media doesn't really cover. But until then, we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
See you guys.